Welcome to this Photoshop tutorial. In this particular session, we're going to look at the use of layer blending modes and the use of masks to be able to control the elements that we've blended on particular layers. What I've got here is I've got a picture I took on a recent skiing trip to France, a little overexposed, but I'm not happy with the sky. I want to put in one of those sort of a Côte d'Azur blue skies. So the sky's a little bit cloudy and a little bit wishy-washy in the blues. So pressing onto my layers, I bring up my layers palette, and you can see I only have the one background layer, the default layer that you always get in a picture in Photoshop. I'm going to click the new layer icon to add a new layer. On this new layer, I want to add some graduation of colour. So I've chosen two colours here. I've clicked onto my foreground colour square and I've chosen a slightly darker blue, and then I've clicked OK. And then on my background colour, I've chosen a slightly lighter blue. I'm going to take my graduation tool, and now on my new layer I'm just going to run a graduation top to bottom to get that. So you can see how I've got the lighter colour graduating. I'm just going to run that a little shorter because I want to create a slight more graduation in my sky. Now what I plan to do then is I'm going to blend this top layer with the layer underneath, and I'm going to use here the multiply mode, which will make a slightly darker result out of the two layers, and that then gives me that. You can see that it's obviously blended everything in the foreground, all the snow and the mountains and everything, but we're going to sort that out in a minute. But overall the sky's quite good, and a good little trick here is to switch on and off the layer so you can see the effect. I can still see the wispiness of the clouds coming through, and maybe now this is a little darker than I anticipated, so I'm just going to take down the fill of this top layer. So I'm going to double click that, change that to 75%, and that's better. That's the sort of colour that I'm after. To control the elements that I don't want to be colorized by the multiplication of this graduation of two colors is that on this top layer, I'm now going to click the Add Layer Mask icon to add a mask that allows me to punch a transparent hole through this colored part of the layer, seeing through to the original layer underneath. I'm just going to close that for the moment so you can see it a little better. Taking a brush and making sure I've got black chosen, because painting black into your mask punches a hole through that particular layer. I've got a soft-edged brush. I could choose to go with a hard-edged brush, but I want to be able to diffuse this effect in. So I've got a large soft-edged brush. I'm going to use the keys to the right of the P key, the brackets key. I'm going to hit the right bracket just to take my brush size up. And I'm painting at 100%. I need to make my flow 100% as well. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to very quickly punch a hole through there, which is going to paint back through the original foreground of this image. So there's all the mountains coming through. To deal with this edge along here, I'm going to take my brush size down a bit, so I'm going to hit the left bracket key, and then I'm going to take my flow down. A good little shortcut here to be able to change the flow of the brush, or the opacity, is that if I was to press 4 on the keyboard, it changes it to 40%, 8 for 80%. I'm going to press 2 to go down to 20%, so I'm then painting very light shades of grey, so I'm painting in different degrees of transparency just to bring that edge of the top of the mountains back into clearer view. Remember, I'm only punching a hole through the mask. The last thing I want to do is just to accentuate a few different parts of cloud. So I'm going to press 1 to go down to 10%, and then I'm just going to stroke in a few little bits of clouds. I'm just seeing through to the original clouds in the original background image. If I now recall my layers, first of all, I'm going to switch off the eye icon that stops the top layer working. So you can see there's the original image. And if I reinstate that, there is the graduated color in the multiply mode graduating with the background of this image. If I hold down the Alt key on both Mac and Windows and I click the corresponding mask, you'll see that's how my mask has worked out. So I could still paint in little sections of the mask that I realise I've missed in the foreground here. Alt-clicking my mask returns me back to the image, and there we are. I'll just close that, and there's my completed piece of work. So that was using the multiply mode to multiply the top layer with the layers underneath, and it creates a darker result. I'm going to now switch to another image. Now this is going to look at what we call the colour mode, and here I have a picture of an eye. It's an RGB photograph, so it's in a colour mode, but it's obviously has no colour. It's effectively a grayscale. I'm going to click the new layer icon, and what I want to do here is that I want to be able to apply a flesh tone colour via another layer, and also it means that I can then control the layer and control the colour better. I'm just going to flip to a web browser, and I'm going to use this to look up a good CMYK value for a flesh tone. So if I flip into Safari here, because I'm on a Macintosh, and I've gone to Google and I've typed in a search of just CMYK flesh tones, and a particular web page that I use a lot is this one from smugmug.com, which sounds like a pretty good name. So if I click onto that, it comes up, and if I scroll down a little bit, I use this a great deal. There's 3 pictures here, a sort of much more Asian Oriental type of skin, and it gives you the CMYK values here. A sort of lighter skin and then a lighter skin again, very much what I might call an English rose type of skin. I'm going to go for the middle setting here, so I'm looking at the CMYK values, so I'm going to go for 22, 44, 57. So remembering those values, switch back to Photoshop, and then onto my colour picker, I'm going to type in those values. So that was 22, 44 and 57. And click OK, and that's now given me that flesh tone. If I then go to the Edit menu, a very useful command here is the Fill command. So I've got this layer selected, and I'm going to ask to then fill this layer with my foreground colour in the normal mode at 100%. So that's going to then flood that colour into that layer. At the moment we're in the normal mode, is the blending between the 2 layers, so it's effectively fresh paint on top of the paint underneath. But if I now change the normal mode to the colour mode, because the background image has no colour, I need to use the colour mode to be able to apply the hue of this colour, the sort of reddy brownness of this colour, as well as the saturation to add colour. Now it's a little too much in areas, so again I'm going to just take the fill of this layer. I'm going to take it down to 75%. Lastly, I want to be able to see through to the original eye. What I'm going to do is I'm going to now add a mask to this layer to be able to control the transparency effect that I want on this top layer so I can see through to the original eye underneath. I'm going to take myself a brush, and I'm going to use a soft-edged brush in this case, which is just going to give me a little soft edge around where I paint onto the image. I've checked that I've got a full flow of paint and black selected, and I'm working in my mask, and I can now just paint carefully onto it just to reveal through the top coloured layer, seeing through to the image underneath. So a nice quick little routine just to get through to the original image. There, that's gone fairly well. So that's all fine. And if I alt-click my mask, you can see I can paint in a few little extra areas that I realise that I've missed, and there we go. So that's blending in the colour mode. Very useful, the colour mode. It's really designed for blending the top layer with a layer underneath and converting a black and white image by taking the colour from the top image. If this image underneath already had colour, then I would use the hue mode as my blending mode, but you'll notice it has no result. Because the image underneath is black and white, we need to blend in the colour mode. The last one we're going to look at is this little image here. First of all, I need to go to the mode menu and just change it into RGB, because it is a true grayscale image, so it cannot contain any colour at all, but by changing into RGB, I can then add colour. Now here I want to give the effect of some blood that's splattered onto this head that's just been freshly cut off. So I'm going to add myself a new layer, and I'm going to take my lasso tool, and I'm then just going to draw over little sections of this image here quite randomly to put some little drippy type of blood onto it. I'm going to go to my colour picker, and going to the reds in my colour picker, I'm going to pick myself a nice blood red colour and then click OK. And then Edit menu and Fill again, and filling my selection with my foreground colour in the normal mode at 100% gives me that. And then I can just do Apple D or Control D on Windows to cancel that selection. Now at the moment this is just a flat colour sitting over the top of the image. If I was to change this to the overlay mode, then you can see what effect that's now had. It's like the effect of actually blending the top layer and wrapping it tonally onto the layer underneath. It can be used for all sorts of things. It can be used for reflections in the sides of windows or cars. It can be used for doing shadows over things at the same time. Again, what I might want to do is just to change some of the intensity of some of these parts. So again, I'm going to add a layer mask. I'm going to choose myself a paintbrush. I've got a diffused edged brush, and I'm going to take my flow down. I'm going to press 2 on the keypad. That gives me 20%, and then I can just paint some light strokes over here just to control the transparency effect of how that sits on that. So I've got something like that. So the 3 different modes: the overlay mode, the color mode, and also the multiply mode. There's loads and loads of these in Photoshop, and they're all worth checking out. Some of them I tend to use more than others. The hue mode, obviously, for colorizing objects that already have color. I use hard light quite a lot, and the darken mode too. If you've got access to the Photoshop manual, it gives a very good description of all the modes in there, and it even has a good gallery of photographs that can explain fairly well how all these modes work. So layer blending modes, also using a mask in conjunction to control what you've blended on the layer itself.